What's up, your boy Domuto. We back with another video today. We're watching Plus. What if the Human Z Fighters became Saiyans Part 7? Alright, we got a 40-minute video right here by my boy Plus. He's killing it so far. And I'm ready to get into it, man. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, and let go.
Time and space are leapt through by Trunks' time machine, as Yamcha, like the hero from the future, is unable to remain conscious for long due to his injuries. He's fading in and out over and over, and replaying the fight against Black, specifically his screw-up in it. He finally passes out fully and is only awoken by the rush of a senzu bean he'd been force-fed, before being pulled harshly out of a bed inside of Capsule Corp. The rude awakening came from Vegeta, who'd hoisted him up by his throat and pinned him to the wall. Almost everyone had squeezed their way into the small room by now. Goku and Krillin were attempting to hold back the prince, as he demanded answers as to why Yamcha was the only one to come back and in such a sorry state. Finally getting Vegeta off, Yamcha gathers his wits and breath and comes clean. He tells about Black Zenkai and the partnership with Zamasu, as well as how Black came to be. And he admits that he'd had Black right where he needed him to finish him off. If only he had a little more energy, but he had to depend on Gohan and Trunks just to make it back here. Having all theories now confirmed, Beerus and Whis decided to take the Supreme Kai, who'd recently returned from taking Goku and Whis to visit Grand Zeno. They would deal with Present Zamasu, and this would of course work the same way the anime showed us, just without Goku present. Yamcha, after delivering his message, feels very low, and he hangs his head in shame. He'd served as much of a purpose as he could, it seemed, and inadvertently, the others began to strategize on what to do next without him. They were focusing on saving Trunks and Gohan right now, and not consoling their friend. Bulma was of course the first to come up with the simplest yet strongest plan. Due to Krillin's intervention, they still had two time machines, one just in much worse shape than the other. They needed to get their heavy hitters back to the future ASAP, and a full tank would take 24 hours to synthesize. That 24 hours would pass here and in the future, something they really couldn't afford to do right now. Her reasoning is they can synthesize a one-way trip worth of fuel for the pure Saiyans to get there, and then let Bulma refuel and furbish the second time machine after they dealt with the threat. Even with the power boost that Yamcha had warned about, there was no way Black and Zamasu could contend with Goku, Vegeta, and Krillin at the same time. Plus, Gohan and Trunks were back up. This, however, would do nothing about Zamasu's immortality, but Tien and Piccolo, both present, instantly suggest the use of the Mafuba. In lieu of this, Krillin and Goku opt to go to Master Roshi's and study the technique until it was time to go. They had to really hurry for this one. It wasn't a terrible plan by any measure. By this point, Vegeta, who had somehow become the de facto leader of the situation, was simply ready to do away with Black and Zamasu forever. Whether they had powered up or were still too weak to entertain him, no longer affected his decision. He let Black slide instead of obliterating him in the first place, so all the blame couldn't be placed on Yamcha. This is when he noticed the back of Ced Man weaving out of the busy strategy meeting. A Ced Three Eyes also took keen notice of this, and empathy caused Tien's face to grimace. Outside, Yamcha just wanted to escape to anywhere people didn't count on him. Of course, that was easier said than done now. His family had waited at Capsule Corp for his return, even more passionately after he'd been the only person to return, and injured at that. Kurizu and Puar were the first to make it to Yamcha, leaving her friend's side to hug him, as his wife Pizza, holding his son, also rushed to him, happy that he was alright. The first thought Yamcha had was that Gohan may not get to have a reunion like this because of him. Trunks may not ever. He couldn't hold them or face them at all. Yamcha could only apologize and run. He flies off. Kurizu dashes after him, but her Uncle Tien placed a hand on her head and told her to stay with her mom and brother. He would go get her dad back. Placing a trust in him, Tien boasts off to track down his old rival. Vegeta watches the two fly away, and he sighs. He'd been just about to ask Tien to accompany him to the room spirit in time for a last-minute bit of training, but instead, he decides to meditate close to Bulma and the time machine. He was leaving as soon as he could, backup or not, and right now they all need to focus on getting to the future. Who knew how much longer Trunks and Gohan could hold out? Trunks and Gohan, with the help of Future Mai and Yajirobe, successfully escaped Black and Zamasu after seeing Yamcha off. The hybrid Saiyans dropped their power and rode with them back to the other survivors, just before the two evil deities could catch up to them. The narrow escape and prior battles had left everyone drained, but Mai instantly leapt back into the role of commander, planning out possible escape routes from their current position. Yamcha Black is known to be a bit more proactive than the menace we're used to in Goku Black. Trunks soon joins her, as did Gohan, and soon they had their own impromptu strategy meeting, with the majority of Mai's men, Yajirobe and the Saiyans, all present. Most of the civilian survivors slept through this though. Gohan, as a student of Piccolo, stated the hard truth instantly. He and Trunks alone would not be enough to hold off the enemy if they were caught while moving. Add on to that, there can only be so many places to move to. At some point, Black would do away with every structure they could use to hide in. Trunks grimaced at this. His fear was that his father and the others would come to a desolate future that he and Gohan had once again failed to defend. Or maybe, Black and Zamasu would move on to another timeline and another Earth. But then, Gohan spoke up and told everyone there was one thing they could try: fusion. Everyone at first looks extremely confused, as the scholar explains the concept, a technique Goku and Piccolo had studied in the other world. Gohan's father had thought it a fun way to bond with his son and friends, teaching a lot of them as a game mostly. But he assured there was incredible potential in this technique. From what he had studied of it, it wasn't simply the fusion of two warriors, but a magnification on top of that as well. He and Trunks could make one single fighter and take down the threat finally. Zamasu's healing wouldn't surprise them ever again, and Black could be destroyed if he's overpowered. From there, Zamasu would be simple to handle, even after the fusion. Hearing this, Trunks is instantly all in, especially since he gets to learn something from Gohan again.
That sounds perfect, Gohan. Please teach me.
Oh, Smug sticky here. Oh, my nigga Smug. Hold on.
Seen Goten and the kids practice so many times, he also stressed all the alignment and synchronicity both parties must maintain, as well as the matching of power levels, which wouldn't be hard for them. Both are older and more experienced in ki control than Kid Trunks and Goten were in canon, and through mastering Super Saiyan 2 state, they've even demonstrated higher levels of ki control than canon Goku had around that time. Hence the syncing of power being pretty simple. Like his father would be, Trunks is a bit embarrassed by the moves, but not unwilling to try them, for the sake of everyone else. His only issue, he didn't think himself coordinated enough to do all that. Gohan does note that his friend could be quite stiff from time to time, and he did fluster pretty easily, but it gives him an idea. He knows how to help Trunks with not only his coordination for the fusion dance, but also his embarrassment about it. He demonstrates how he'll train Trunks by bringing the hand he wore his watch on and grinning as he transforms into the Great Saiyan Man, replacing his tattered and ruined gi before running through his poses and catchphrases. The room falls silent as the soldiers question if this is really what the fate of the world came down to. Hearing that and seeing Trunks grimace once again, Gohan spoke sternly.
Trunks, I know it's all silly, but I think this is how we win. You and I both have to grow up and stop holding our hands out for our dads to pull us along. Sometimes, we'll just look lame and get it done ourselves.
Contemplating his words for a moment, the hero from the future placed his faith in Gohan. Their plan was now set, and he and Gohan had to get to work on a lot of choreography. They only did so for so long into the night, just before getting ready to rest themselves, when urgently, a scout warned that Yamcha Black was sighted destroying buildings not far from them. They were on the move minutes afterwards. 9 hours left until the time machine is fueled. Back in the present, Yamcha sits alone in the desert, the act in and of itself conveying how he feels. Tien would have little trouble finding him, and would call to him from the sky.
Why do you still sit on your behind? Are you that afraid? Shut up, Tien! Get out of here, would ya? I don't think I will.
The former assassin lands and confronts his formerly human friend, actually forcing his hand onto his head at one point, and like Goku had done to Krillin in the Namek Saga, getting the full scope of what his friend had seen and done in the future they'd originally been too weak to survive in.
You and I have a long history, and we've shared a lot. We've even both seen each other at our worst. Remember the time I broke your leg?
At Yamcha's sour reaction to Tien's pep talk so far, the three-eyed warrior elaborated on what he really meant to convey. He tells him there's nothing wrong with being afraid. Saiyans do feel fear. There was no way becoming one would eliminate that. The only thing they can do is just face their fears and get stronger than those. Tien then focused ki to his hand, reminding Yamcha that he was in fact also a genius of combat and ki techniques. He replicated Yamcha Black's ki claws near perfectly, before roaring out with determination.
I was scared I couldn't get stronger unless I became a Saiyan, but that wasn't true. So I got stronger than the me that couldn't even have that fear. Even if we're scared, we fight and do our best, Yamcha. That's all you can do.
Yamcha hadn't even realized he began crying in front of his rival, and quickly went about wiping his eyes to hide the emotion that Tien had already shared, processed, and accepted. Damn it all if that wasn't the exact kick in the ass he currently needed. He asked his friend if he would please show him how to do that ki claw before time was up, and Tien happily agreed to do so while reaching out to help Yamcha to his feet. They then rise into the air, and Tien warns his training will be much harder than what Roshi was probably putting Goku and Krillin through right now. Turtle wouldn't agree though. When Tien proposed training, Yamcha expected to use his dojo. He'd been surprised when he led him up to the lookout and into the room spirit in time, while leaving Dende with a specific time to allow to pass before they left. Even more surprising was that Vegeta hadn't claimed the room for himself, but in this timeline, Vegeta doesn't necessarily need to. Again, he and Goku in this timeline have already been incredibly further along than their canon counterparts were. Having more training partners around your level or on your heels would just do that to you. Tien then proceeded to pound the ki claw technique into Yamcha, allowing him to spar with Tien whilst he mimicked Black. Initially, Yamcha defaulted to using his base form, but Tien showed him instantly that was a mistake. Here he virtually demonstrates the same lesson that we sadly had to teach the Saiyans in canon. Training in higher forms reduces the total possible progress one can make. Having been left with only his base form and all the power he gained from his days as a Saiyan, Tien has tried to train endlessly with full knowledge that he won't be able to transform anymore. Other than the Kaioken he learned in this timeline, what he has is what he has. Not to mention the training partners he's had in this very room were also very impressive, and have added a lot to his age and power level. By this point,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't see y'all then.
All right. All right.
it's arguable we'd see Tien look for and develop alternative ways of powering up away from the Kaioken. It did the job of a quick and dirty power-up, but essentially it makes him a glass cannon, and he's fully aware of that. He needs something which won't be a drastic drain on his energy, and at first, I honestly believe he'd attempt to evolve the max power form / the Super Saiyan Grade 3 form of just bulking up for a boost, with the added reduction in speed. Not only that, I believe he'd really easily find a way to balance it, kinda how Grade 2 did, but doing so with only the ki one has in base form, kinda like Cell showed us. And remember this, because it will come up again, just a bit later. All I can say now is, even though Tien has a different perspective than his canon counterpart, no one has all the answers. That's why we have teachers. This is all just to say that Yamcha isn't just coming in here and mollywopping Tien because he's still a Saiyan. But with this Saiyan blood heated up again, Yamcha gets really into sparring, and like Goten did against Trunks, he can help a burst into Super Saiyan. Tien's sharp eyes notice this instantly, and calling on not only his own experience with Yamcha, but also the habits and tells he noticed through reading his mind, he increased the difficulty of his Yamcha Black impersonation, and surges his body with a bit of ki. This makes him gain a tiny bit of bulk, and makes his ki claws flare up. He just barely dodges Yamcha's much faster jab towards his head, and the follow-up sky kick he tried to launch him into the air with, allowing Tien to easily shoulder check him with a burst of flight, knocking him off balance before he balled his fist up and the ki around it before striking his guts. The increased power would likely protect him anyway. He then feels something wet on his cheek and notices a small cut, as Yamcha smirks and stands back up for more, a faint and weak version of the ki claws now on his hands. Now they were both really excited. There are now 6 hours left before the time machine is refueled. After moving locations successfully thanks to an early warning, Gohan and Trunks have decided to try the fusion dance for real for the first time. Though inevitably, for the sake of the gag, we have to see their failed fusion forms, eating up 2 more of their hours and causing the 2 of them to travel away from the survivors just in case. I think it'd be very easy for Trunks to get nostalgic by training on the edge of the city with Gohan, and maybe he could even tell Gohan about the last time he'd seen his future counterpart alive, or even just more stories of how he was in this timeline. Gohan, while touched by this, can see the failures and decrease in time limit begin to take a toll on Trunks. He's starting to rightfully get frustrated, but their training is interrupted as Mai arrives at 2 surviving children, explaining she'd come to get them before the survivors moved again, and that these 2 had literally begged her to tag along. The kids had obviously been big fans of Trunks, and she didn't have the heart to deny it for them. They'd actually been watching and very much enjoyed copying and imitating the Great Saiyaman poses. And seeing this gets Trunks to actually smile and even laugh a little bit. And before long, Gohan and Trunks are riding alongside Mai and the children on a small capsule bike to keep their ki hidden. Seeing the children and Trunks interact with them had made Gohan think for a while, until finally, he shared his thoughts with Trunks.
You know, after Pan was born, I think I got a lot stronger. Not through training, just by meeting her. It's like I never wanted anything bad to happen to her. And then I think of how Videl feels and how my mom used to worry for me. I don't want any parent to worry for their children. That's why I took a step forward.
He then decides it'd be best to rest until they need to move again. If they overstressed, Trunks wouldn't be able to do the dance smoothly. Upon Trunks becoming worried about this, Gohan smiles and laughs like Goku would, strangely enough, and assures him that he's certain the next time they try it, Trunks will do the dance perfectly. There are now 4 hours left until the time machine is refueled. Goku and Krillin also continue to hammer away at learning the Mafuba, and Roshi at this point would like to reflect on the fact that all 3 of his students have become Saiyans. He then reminds his 2 students that while Yamcha has always been a bit slower on the uptake than the 2 of them, there was a reason the former greatest martial artist on Earth took the Desert Bandit on as a student. He bet them all the magazines in his trunk that Yamcha would meet them at the time machine and be ready to try again, and the 2 would never doubt their master or their friend. Yamcha and Tien had decided to spend a full 5 months and 29 days in the chamber, meaning inevitably Yamcha would quickly outclass his rival, even in base form. Though, Tien had actually surprised Yamcha by also displaying subtly some more of the concepts he'd been taught by Whis when training. Then again, the 3-eyed man had trained so much with Vegeta, Krillin, and even Goku, it wasn't surprising that he'd been growing rapidly and picking things up by association. Meanwhile, he'd somewhat taken his attention off his friend as he'd returned to being human, even as Tien continued striving to push the boundaries of human power, and he was still doing it with the help of friends and teachers. The warrior had kept pushing, while he'd grown complacent. If Tien could still climb higher, even at a slow pace, why couldn't he? Finally, after Tien started to grow a beard, the 2 decided Yamcha's power and technique had been pushed far enough. Black wouldn't get lucky twice. There is now 1 hour remaining until the time machine is refueled. Back in the future, the survivors are all woken up by booms overhead. Zamasu and Black can launch an early morning attack as a duo, transporting into the area they planned on searching instead of Black flying there to switch up their strategy and catch the mortals off guard. Mai and her men leap into action and rush the survivors up and awake. They'd have to start moving quickly or they'd be on top of them. Gohan and Trunks decide they can lure the duo away and then attempt the fusion after a distraction. If they were successful and did it right off the bat, there's a chance the battle could get someone hurt with as much power as they could throw around. As survivors clear the room, Gohan tells Trunks that this is it. No matter what happens, they make their stand here and now and stop this before their dads get here. They do this together. The brothers in arms nod, and in sync, power up to the Master Super Saiyan 2 state. With that done, Black and Zamasu would be on them like hounds, and the roof caved in as Black alone burst through it in his base form and attacked. Gohan realized the devil had guessed their plan in some form, and tells Trunks they have to catch up with everyone else before Zamasu gets there. But Black was on them tight. It was tricky to just cover each other in fighting him. Outside, the fears of Gohan are confirmed, as Zamasu corners the survivors, hailing his own arrival since the filthy mortals can't think to do so themselves. He senses a key signature from a bit of rubble that's a pretty good sniping vantage point, and prepares to fire a key blast in that direction. He's then surprised as 2 explosions rock him from below. He'd taken his eyes off Mai and the civilians, one of which included Yajirobe, who could wield 2 rocket launchers easily. Zamasu is actually forced back, and the survivors go fleeing as Mai and her men open fire and try and hold him off as best as possible. Even Yajirobe doing what he can with those rocket launchers. But that wouldn't last very long. Thinking quickly, Gohan drew in attacks and techniques that he remembered never damaging him too badly, but always setting him up for Mr. Piccolo to hit him with something much more fierce. Trunks thought back to the overwhelming duo that was 17 and 18. Synchronicity so deep, no communication was ever needed, and the ability to cover and combo off any move the other made. He needed to emulate that right now. The Sons of Battle Geniuses display their own prowess as Gohan throws feinted jabs, easily intercepted by Black, who tries to break Gohan's hands, only for Gohan to manifest sharp eye beams that slam to the fake Yamcha's eyes, much quicker than he was prepared for, and once again forcing his eyes closed temporarily. Gohan then opened his mouth, firing off a mouth beam that forced Black's head to snap back. And syncing with Gohan as he never felt closer to him, Trunks quickly rushed under the other hybrid's guard and into Black's open chest with a shoulder tackle, followed by a flurry of blows until finally,
I hope I do this right. Gallic Gun!
Inspired by Yamcha's earlier successful blow, the point-blank beam of his father slammed home on Black, and hit with much more force than expected since he'd never seen it coming. It easily drives him through the walls of a few buildings as the two make their escape. They get outside just in time to simultaneously knock Zamasu away as he continued to catch machine gun fire, likely preparing to return the shooter's property once they ran out. They then ordered Mai and her men to leave as well as they attempted to go ahead and do the fusion dance, but a burst of energy singled Black's charge. Bursting into the Rose form, he was going to simply ram into Gohan and Trunks and split them in half. Actually, just as Gohan and Trunks had expected. In tandem, they went for a solar flare, only for Zamasu to appear in front of Black and hug his other self. Shielding both their eyes from the light, the two then spun and easily blasted the 2 Super Saiyans away. Remember, Black had only gotten stronger since Yamcha, Gohan, and Trunks pushed him to his limits again. Being in the Super Saiyan 2 state kept them from serious injury from the blast, but they were still knocked out of it. 30 minutes left until the time machine is refueled. Back in the present, the Z-Fighters were preparing to... No, Zamasu and Black were waiting no longer. It was time to complete their Zero Mortal plan and move on. Raising their hands once again to prepare the Holy Light Grenade, Gohan and Trunks are far too tired to get themselves out of this, but struggle against their exhausted bodies anyway. Suddenly, a rock conks against Black's scarred face. Looking to the culprit, it is one of the kids from earlier. The boy called for Gohan and Trunks to not give up. They were the heroes they've been waiting for, and the heroes never lose. The soldiers attempted to wrangle the boy back, reprimanding him for putting everyone in danger. This wasn't some shonen manga, and Zamasu was about to burn that harsh reality into them by obliterating them all. But then the tired Gohan had forced himself to his feet and in front of the blast with only his arms to shield them. His helmet had long ago cracked and fallen off, and the green vest he wore over his suit had been torn to ribbons by now.
Trunks, remember!
Inspired and possessed by the same insanity that drove Gohan forward, the swordsman without a weapon struggled back to his own feet. The two then posed and spoke boldly, confusing the executioners. They were unmitigated champions of justice, who tolerated no evil. The great Saiyan were at that young man's service. Yes, they basically do a Super Sentai roll call. And again, Black and Zamasu are confused. Stopping for a moment, they notice the soldiers running away, with the little boy cheering his head off.
What are they doing, my dear counterpart? I believe the hybrid Saiyans have evolved to express themselves through interpretive dance, as well as fighting. How interesting.
Hearing this, Gohan gets an idea, but surely it can't be that simple. Then again, these guys were really full of himself.
It's Trunks! They've learned our secret! Quick, we have to finish the final dance of sorrow before they strike again! Go on, mortal. We will allow you this final act. Call it mercy for showing yourself a bit more cultured than your fathers.
Trunks, though confused, caught on quickly to Gohan's terrible acting. The call of Fusion Ha accompanied the duo performing the dance perfectly for the first time. As it's pretty likely that they wouldn't immediately recognize the dance, Black and Zamasu realize something is wrong as an amazing power is born into the world. With Trunks and Gohan nowhere in sight, and someone brand new standing in front of them.
So this is our fusion. As for what to call us, let's just go with Gohunks to be quick.
Zamasu and Black were completely flabbergasted, demanding to know how they fused without Patari erasers. While Gohan simply lays a hand on his sword calmly. Almost like they were moving in slow motion, the fusion walked past them both and slashed only twice, splitting them both at the chest, but sadly not killing either.
No, that's right. You broke Trunks' sword, so I cut too shallow. Wait here.
Zamasu healed instantly and went about dealing with the damage on Black. When he looked back up, Gohanks had already disappeared. Meanwhile, as Mai and the survivors continue to move further away, she recognizes Trunks' shattered sword lying in the street still. A grim reminder that her friend was currently fighting with everything he had left, meaning she had to do her part, so it was nothing they could worry about, right? A man she'd never seen before, yet who carried a strong familiarity, appeared over the broken tool, making her and the others pause for a single moment. Blue Keek surrounded the sword, and it levitates with all its shattered fragments before being perfectly welded back into place and dropping into the stranger's hands. He throws it up and smoothly catches it in the sheath on his back, before smiling to Mai and the others and disappearing once again in a streak of light. Focusing back on their goal, Black and Zamasu are flying after the survivors, still very confused by Gohanks. The Black of this timeline, as inhibiting Yamcha's body, does share some mannerisms with the original Yamcha. When stressed, he gets a bit more antsy and cowardly than Goku Black would, and he details these fears to his other half, citing the fact that Zamasu was no match for this fusion, so they need to make sure that Potara is safe and that he isn't killed. Zamasu then noticed a glint and trusted his other half's words, tearing off his own left ear and shoving it into the gi of Black before pushing him out of the way. A streak of light went past him, and behind him was a kneeling Gohanks, sheathing his now reconstructed sword. The next thing Zamasu knew, he'd been diced into cubes, and Gohanks' other hand was used to turn those into dust. Even his immortality couldn't stand up to total disintegration. Remember, by this point, he doesn't have the power that few Zamasu in the anime had. Needless to say, Black was angered that he had to be saved by his other half once again, though he's incredibly grateful that he heeded his warning, stowing away the earring and a piece of himself to regen from. But he now has to buy time for Zamasu to come back from that, enough to heal him and switch their earring to the other ear to fuse, all by himself. He could simultaneously feel fear and excitement, and didn't know if it was his body or himself. Realizing he is planning a scheme to stay alive against a mere mortal once again infuriated the false Yamcha even further. Not only that, but to be deceived by mortals they thought so low beneath themselves. He powered up to his max to unleash his fury onto the lying half Saiyans. His confidence had cost him once. He would hold nothing back anymore. He was again thankful that he'd taken so much pain to grow stronger from. But when Gohanks felt even a slight bit of strain against his opponent, he instantly pauses and completely stands still, before erupting into the Super Saiyan God form and electing a flurry of slashes from Yamcha Black, and is now massive and blazing ki claws and throwing him back very far, channeling his power into his sword until it glowed brightly. Gohanks let loose a barrage of slashes that formed a literal volley of crescent-shaped ki blades in the air, which went shooting towards Black, who went bulging up to avoid them to just buy a few more seconds, flying through and around destroyed abandoned buildings. Gohanks then noticed the direction Black had chosen was the same direction the survivors had ran away in, causing him to actually frown deeply.
I won't allow you to harm anyone else!
As Black looked back at him, he noticed Gohanks gaining on him rapidly, and all of a sudden zigzagging closer to him, too fast to follow, until he appeared in front of him, allowing Black to notice a flicker of blue ki mixed in with his red. The fusion struck out with a vicious roundhouse that nearly beheaded Black, but did completely scramble his brains. He then transitioned his momentum seamlessly into a dragon uppercut that hit nearly like his sword did, cutting him from chest to head once again. How could his power have increased so quickly from one attack to the next? Being more and more stressed in battle, Black's self-proclaimed genius body began to adapt as he struggled to live even an added second longer against Gohanks. He'd actually adapted enough to notice the shifting Gohanks' hair in full finally, from red and relaxed to blue and spiky in the instant of contact, and back again. This fusion could somehow use Super Saiyan Blue, even though neither participant in it had shown that they could. But his growth, as impressive as it was, is all for naught. Black is killed by Gohanks in as efficient and quick a way as possible, only for enough of Zamasu to reform in the nick of time. He heals his body of the fatal damage instantly, and this means Gohanks' blast to finish him off is repelled by the Yamcha copy, as he is given another massive power boost, and now he can contend with the fused warrior much better. But when getting back into the fight, he is somehow making less progress than before against the stoic fusion. The worst thing about this is the fact that Black senses no anger or malice from this being. With both Gohan and Trunks, their attacks were fueled by it, which made them predictable and stupid, but this man in front of them held no killing intent, and it made it extremely hard to react to him. In fact, he could feel more intent to protect his surroundings than anything else, as if he was so strong that truly going all out would just destroy everything. His mere existence was a danger to them, though he wasn't even hostile. It was simply a case of being strong enough to exist while Gohanks did. This fusion views Zamasu and Black as nothing more than a germ basically. They just need to be wiped out. They aren't worth more thought and emotion than that, because that's how this fusion would likely be. We've seen moments of ego from both Trunks and Gohan before, true, but they are pretty extremely rare. There's also a seriousness that both of them carry, so the confidence in themselves is expressed and not even viewing the villain as a threat. Finally, Gohanks notices Zamasu still here, and tired of the games, the fusion begins to set up for a finishing blow by moving his arms at high speed to generate intense heat and finally pull back into his
Super Burning Kamehameha!
Overwhelmed and humiliated once again, Yamcha Black finally thought of a dastardly way out of this and raised his hand to appropriate the solar flare just before Gohanks released his blast. The Fusion smartly closed his eyes, yet still fired. But Black had just barely dived out of the way, only losing a leg for his trouble and nearly striking out with a black spirit ball to the unsuspecting Fusion. But all of a sudden, something broke through time and space. A time machine had appeared, and the glass cover on it shattered as Yamcha sprang from it like a carnivore possessed by famine, fully powered up to Super Saiyan Blue and with godly ki claws flaring in power. Passing right by Gohanks and bum-rushing Black, he skids to a halt on the other side of him, breaking the prepared ki blast he had made, and with Black's right arm in his grasp and not on the body of his imposter, as Gohanks recognized the new arrivals. The Zamasu in the stolen body seemed to finally know despair as he fell forward, unable to stand. While ignored for a moment as a weakling, Zamasu could do only one thing. He puts his earring on his right ear. Light erupted around the partners in genocide as he and Black were magically pulled together. The voices of the Supreme Kais of Universe 7 and 10 screamed out in despair, and the two reveal that they'd moved all the survivors to the world of the Kais in this timeline. They tell Gohanks he can finally go all out as Zamasu makes his appearance, and Gohanks squares off with him one final time. Like Gohan has said, they weren't quitting just because their dads and the others had gotten there. And speaking of Goku and the others, they would be likely incredibly surprised to see and feel the power of Gohanks. Adult Fusion seemed much more potent than that of when the kids tried it. But sadly, there were 0 minutes left until the time machine is refueled, meaning Gohanks is split back into the heroes that made him up, both still fairly worn out. While Gohan and Trunks are happy their planet worked to buy time, they can't lie and say they weren't holding out hope to end this themselves.
Gohan!
Trunks! Good job, son. I'm proud of you.
Their fathers encouraged them as they walked past them with Krillin at their side. Seeing their backs this time didn't come with a sting of failure. It was hard to describe the joy one can feel when realizing the difference between depending on their parents and being supported and pushed forward by them. Now, of course, Zamasu starts monologuing. He'd recognized Yamcha's growth in a short time, but without fusion, they were hopeless. And they definitely weren't allowing them to get any Potara of their own. In fact, a bolt of lightning tried to strike down the Kais, but Vegeta got them out of the way extremely quickly. He wouldn't fight Kakarot on who went first on this one. And as such, Goku is Zamasu's first opponent. And he would, even considering the circumstances, thank him for the first real challenge he's had in years.
With so many Saiyans around, it's hard to keep the bad guys alive long enough for everyone to have a go. Let's give it our all.
Goku from the jump went Super Saiyan Blue. And keep in mind, the person who would benefit the most from a timeline like this is unequivocally Goku. Stronger contemporaries means the level he's willing to sit at or be lazy at has to be risen. The changes of this timeline have continuously ramped up the power of both villains and heroes alike, and Goku has had more and stronger training partners, and much more experience with the form of Super Saiyan Blue. So he engages Zamasu and gives his rebuttal to Whis' question the strongest amongst his students, not counting Beerus. It would be him if it was the last thing he did. And then he'd go on to rematch and defeat Lord Beerus as well. This timeline had made Goku hungrier. With a single blow, the Saiyan cells inside Zamasu are excited even further. Losing Gohanks as his target barely registered to the deity, as he had a much more entertaining mortal, one that didn't hide his emotions as well, and fired off at him with full power and reckless abandon. And although Goku fought without a real plan of attack, other than attack, Krillin had ensured that Mfubu was ready when needed. He'd softened Zamasu up and helped Krillin seal him off to finish this up cleanly. Vegeta and the others watched the fight closely. As soon as Goku showed an inch of give, they'd pounce and barge into his battle. They all wanted to end this here, and the normal rules of one-on-one weren't too appealing, even with Saiyan sensibilities in mind. The first to do so would most likely be Vegeta, who like Goku would have benefited a lot from the change of this timeline. What he showed off against Black in the present was nothing compared to his full power, so Zamasu's power is contended with fairly well, though the Saiyans will definitely tire before the fused fighter will. There would also probably be some sensu beans in the mix here as well, in case of any serious injuries on the hero's side. And they'd probably get used up pretty quickly as Zamasu tests more and more of his overwhelming strength. This is likely the flow the fight would follow for a while until eventually we see our 4 pure Saiyans fighting together for the first time out of necessity, with Gohan and Trunks still very heavily drained and not able to fuse for the next 30 minutes. I also feel like in this situation they'd refuse any sensu beams, though it's definitely possible that Trunks discovers his Kai ability to heal and gets Gohan back in the fight when he can, but I don't think that's necessarily needed at the moment, or that they'd really have a chance to take their eyes off the fight to learn so. And as for the sensu beams, save them for the heavy hitters. Now granted, the Kais could very easily offer the 2 or any of the other Saiyans their Potara for a pretty easy power up, but I think Zamasu would keep a keen watch on them to prevent this exact situation. Another facet of the fight keeping the Saiyans contending against their superior foe is that he has to be aware of the entire battlefield, and the Saiyans aren't giving him much time to just obliterate the Kais like he wants to. But finally, Zamasu's power outlasts our hero's maximum, and as time passes, the 2 Zamasus begin to fuse on a much deeper level than initially. This is when, like in the manga, upon fighting back Zamasu, Gohan and Trunks flying under the radar work together to land a devastating sneak attack. Trunks impales his sword into the evil deity from behind, while Gohan helps him split the villain in half with his bare hands in a burst of rage. But the two halves of Zamasu refuse to break in two completely, and they stagger as their fused body becomes incredibly unstable. Goku and Krillin seize their chance and pop open the gourd they'd planned to trap Zamasu in using their master's technique. With Krillin along for the ride, there's no way Goku forgets the container or Master Roshi the seal.
Right.
So aiding each other, the duo was able to pull the technique off near flawlessly, but for one single hitch. Zamasu again stubbornly clung to life. A peculiar transformation takes place, as the two halves of Zamasu are forever morphed and changed. Fused Zamasu is going nowhere. In fact, he's only increasing in numbers. Though the Batara would no longer provide a massive power boost, the damage was done, and a new and wholly more powerful and dangerous foe had risen from the ashes once again. Separated, one of the Zamasus is able to escape the sealing whirlwind and regroup as the tired Saiyans attempt to do the same. They are now out of sensu beams, and it had become far too dangerous to bring the Kais close for anything. And they'd soon find that any fatal attacks only led to more Zamasus being formed from the division. The one sealed originally had been easily freed at first chance, and things began to look even worse. The Mafuba could work, but that did not only catch all of them, but make sure they couldn't fight out of it. Krillin had attempted to do just that by switching roles with Goku to attempt a God Scatter Kamehameha, but again, a failure which led to even more Zamasus being produced. So by this point, the huge lead in power the Saiyans had enjoyed for so long in this timeline had been the only thing keeping them alive, and that gap had been all but closed. The issue is that Zamasu has also benefited from that strength they've gained, and in this state, he's only multiplying and getting stronger. Once again weighed down by fear, something clicks for Yamcha. He's making the stand this time. He asks the Kais to get Gohan and Trunks back to the present with them. The Saiyans are holding off Zamasu here. That's the best each of them can do. All they can do.
Tell Beerus and Whis to close off this timeline and get rid of future Zamasu for us. It seems like he won't leave this job unfinished so long as we're alive. We can keep him here.
Though shocked to receive orders from Yamcha of all people, obviously the Kais had little room to argue right now. They were both in grave danger and held responsibility for 2 lives each. Not to mention, as of right now, they were more of a burden than anything. So this was their real only option. But the two weren't leaving the heroes with nothing. They removed their own Batara and throw them to the Saiyans, telling them to fight fire with fire finally. Only for the pack of Zamasus to smartly pounce on the jewelry and snipe them to pieces with a salvo attack from the entire group, causing everyone to flee as Yamcha complains and the Kais get away with Gohan and Trunks.
I think that was our last hope. Quit your whining. You're the one asking for Beerus' help. Now, wait a minute, Vegeta. We still gotta survive this. Let's see how many each of us can take down. Woohoo! Well, obviously, I'm in the lead. You Saiyans from Earth always surprise me with your stupidity. Obviously, I'll defeat the most.
Alone and surrounded, the Saiyans let loose a battle cry and engage the army of overwhelmingly powerful foes. I should mention, however, that Goku does have his Zeno button at this point. So based off of canon, the fight could really logically end here with a Zeno summon. But, like Trunks not discovering his Kai ability, Goku is much too focused to go looking for a sensu he knows isn't there. Different timelines, baby. They allow for escapes from literal Deus Ex Machina. But that doesn't mean this is gonna be easy though. In the present, the Kais arrive with Gohan and Trunks still in very poor shape, but alive. Gawasu decides he's going to bring the survivors from the World of the Kais in Trunks' timeline to Capsule Corp in the present timeline, and he could likely do so fairly simply. Maya is relieved to reunite with Trunks, but he and Gohan are nearly at the end of their rope now. And like Yamcha had told the Kais to, they ask Beerus and Whis for their help. The God and Angel is surprised by the differences and similarities between fathers and sons. Before they can answer though, Tien declares that the mortals were not out of this yet. This causes Beerus to stare him down coldly, only for the three-eyed warrior to gaze back determined. Finally, Beerus scoffs and sits back down, ordering them to do as they like. Now taking the reins, Tien declares that Piccolo and he could still handle this, but they do need some help. Tien wanted everyone to share their energy with him. Everyone. So in an emergency, our heroes pull together to carry out the former assassin's strategy. Tien is even able to get energy from some of his more elite students. Even Gohan gets an idea and rushes home, returning holding much more energy than he'd left with. Trunks actually recognizes the power and is surprised, but Gohan confirms that he was able to convince Pan to give him her energy. She was young, so it was very sloppy and a lot had been lost in the transfer. But even so, the girl seemed to understand the words, "Help Grandpa." All the available ki the Z Warriors and their friends and family can muster is pumped into Tien, who begins struggling to contain it all. With the energy bestowed, Gohan, Trunks, Tien, and Piccolo, holding a rice cooker, use Shin and Gowasu's time rings with the Kais and disappear from the present. Currently in the future, Goku and the Saiyans are on their absolute last legs, reduced to their base forms and unable to move much more. Zamasu and his army of himself had taken the smallest bit of satisfaction savoring the last strokes of their victory, and were just preparing to snuff out their last bits of resistance as well, when the unaccountable happened in front of them. Tien and the others appeared, the former Saiyan blazing with power of those that had supported him thus far, whilst his eyes had blanked except for the third one. He had to focus his sights, and quickly, Gohan and Trunks went even further, squeezing all the ki they could into Tien, even faltering in and out of Super Saiyan for a bit, as they called for the four Saiyans to get down and move. A call of divine Neo-Ki Koho came from Tien, as every member of Zamasu's army was hit with a powerful ki blast, even though they aren't all grouped together. Tien's main beam had splintered to pierce and blow apart each Zamasu, causing them all to lose form for the briefest of moments, and returning to the gooey form right before multiplying. The last step, though, fell to Piccolo, due to Tien blowing all the power he was given in just one shot for their opening. Namekian arms stretched out and pulled the Galapagos Zamasu into a big mass that had struggled to choose a stable state. Piccolo then snapped his arms back and began the Mafubo on his single target. The green blob struggled and actually stabilized before returning to his fused Zamasu state, increasing his power a massive amount due to the tough battle and recombining. This allowed Zamasu to struggle against Piccolo as he got closer and closer to the rice cooker. But the force of Piccolo's Mafuba increased, as Krillin and Goku did what they could to magnify it, using the technique with him to keep Zamasu held down. He was dragged closer and closer by what felt like inches, and just a second longer and he'd outlast them. But that damn dog Yamcha and the former Prince of Saiyans refused to be spectators and jumped above them to deliver critical blows.
Big Bang, attack! Super Spirit Ball!
The attacks carried little force to actually do any real damage on Zamasu, but knocking his body close to the rice cooker was a different story. Overwhelmed by the cooperation of the mortals he looked down on for so long, Zamasu is finally sealed with the evil containment wave. Once and for all, a cheer of a well-earned victory erupts around the still desolate and lifeless cityscape. Trunks collapses to his knees, and he laughs while crying tears of joy, as everyone celebrates time.
Oh, so his timeline didn't get destroyed.
But that plus Ultra Fam is what we'll be leaving the timeline off for right now. Nah, I'm actually lying. The Kais are so shaken up and tired from all the suspense and the constant back and forth in the battle that they are unable to use the time rings to go back just yet. It would actually be the refilled time machine from Cell's timeline that brings half the warriors back, as Shin and Gawasu escort the survivors back to their time. Later, Tien revealed the technique he'd use actually took a significant chunk of his lifespan away, maybe a good 11 or so years. Not very good considering all the time he put into the Room Spirit Room time as of lately. As such, Launch, Buri, and Chaozu forbid him from using the technique ever again. Trunks decides he's going to go and find the new planet Namek in his timeline, after borrowing the plans for the old Capsule Corps spaceship from his mom. He needs to keep getting stronger, and he also needs allies. If Gohan and the others from the future timeline can return from the other world after possibly training, it could do some real good. Plus, if they can revive the future Supreme Kai and Beerus, that'd be even better. It could take some time, and even be dangerous. Shockingly, President Trunks asked a very strange question. Could I come with you? It got the kids buzzing, and a debate was started amongst the adults and their children. The idea of going into space and doing all the cool stuff nearly everyone else they'd grown up around had done, and alongside the cool older brother version of Trunks, it sounds like a pretty sweet deal to all of them. Gohan was also fairly intrigued, but once he heard how Chi-Chi reacted to the idea, he kept that to himself. After a few days of rest, Supreme Kai accompanies Goku to Grand Zeno's palace again. There, Goku gives the rice cooker containing Zamasu to Zeno and the Grand Priest while explaining a bit of what happened. But what Zeno heard was, this guy got in Goku's way while he was looking for that fun person he mentioned. Goku apologized for disappointing him, but he thought of some way that might cheer the god up.
Hey, do you remember that tournament we talked about?
But that plus Ultra Fam is where we will really be leaving the timeline off for right now.
Shout out to my boy Plus, man. He did his thing on this one. Got 2 more episodes left. Let me know how y'all feel about this one down below. I thought this was really good, the way he told it. Yeah, check out the last chapter right here. Check out another thing you might like right here, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.